Hey, weirdos, I'm Ash.
And I'm Elena.
And this is Morbid, honey.
This is Morbid, honey.
It's Morbid, honey, baby, sweetie pie.
It's Morbid, honey. And if you hear, I don't know if you will. I don't think you will, but I'm just hedging my bets here. I'm covering my bases. I'm covering my butt. If you hear a lawnmower in the background, it's not my lawnmower.
If you hear a lawnmower, no, you
don't. It's one of my neighbors is having their lawn done, and it's loud.
It's loud.
But we tried to wait till they were further away. So
yeah, hopefully they don't come back around these pots again.
Yeah, I don't feel like you're going to hear it. But again, just covering all my bases, you know?
I don't know if you're going to hear it. I don't know your life.
I don't know your life. I don't know how good your hearing is, okay? I don't know.
Oh, my God. We're like silly goofy because it's the end of the week.
It is the end of the week.
A little bit tired. I feel very like... Is that a plane?
I think that's the
fuck.
Well, okay, so now my neighbor's mowing their lawn and planes are flying in the sky.
Planes are flying.
Can we have a moment of peace and quiet around here?
Never.
Jesus.
Never. That was a loud fucking plane, though.
That was loud.
He was like, wow. I was like,
I don't like that.
Gonna stay in the sky?
I don't like that.
Please do.
You good in the sky?
You staying up there? I recommend it. All right. Well, with all that silly goofy out of the way, I do have a case that is incredibly tragic because this is morbid.
Yeah.
It's a wild one, though.
It's a distressing one.
It's a distressing one. I saw an episode of Forensic Files and I said, doing it.
Well, there you go.
Doing it. And then
if it's good enough for Forensic Files, it's good enough for me.
I was raised on that program.
That's right.
Literally. But then Dave really helped me get a lot more information. So
we love Dave.
We beefed up this case.
We love a Dave moment.
We love Dave. We love his podcast, Bring Me the Axe.
Yeah, go check it out.
His other podcast, 99-cent rental.
Yeah, I mean, look how good he is helping us out. So.
He's got podcasts on podcasts on podcasts.
He's so good.
He's a brilliant mind, that man. I don't really know. I think I'm in a place of old-timey right now. This is not super old.
You know, that's where I live.
Yeah,
so.
you brought me into that neck of the woods. I was just researching like a bunch of old cases, so I feel like I'm just talking like this now.
You're talking with a transatlantic accent.
Shouldn't we all? When did that just go away?
I would love that.
I know. I feel like that's where I live.
Hey, I'm for it.
I would live
I'll
there.
Never tell you to stop.
I'm just, hey, baby.
That's it.
I don't know.
Nailed it.
I don't know. I'm literally so tired.
It's been a long week.
It has, but let's focus on this because this is a gnarly, very sad story.
Tale.
Yeah, and it all starts with a woman named Betty Wilson. So Betty Wilson was born in, I believe it's called Gadsden, Alabama, on July 14th, 1945. She was one of 4 girls born to Oscar and Nell Woods.
No.
Oscar was a police officer, and Nell worked at a factory.
Okay.
Friends and family would later remember the Woods family as quote-unquote poor, but Betty described the family as typical lower middle class. So
okay.
Just kind of depends who you ask, but they weren't a family that had a ton. And at a time when most of the rural South was transitioning from wartime production, causing massive layoffs, Oscar's job as a police officer actually kept the family afloat. So It was good that he had that position. And what also helped was, like many police officers at the time, Oscar supplemented his income by accepting bribes from local bootleggers, union busters, and gambling operations.
You know.
Yeah.
Just things.
So, like, not good things, but...
just side hustles.
Kept food on the table.
You know, it's hustle culture.
It is. It's not the best, but they had 4 kids.
That's what he did.
Yeah. Well, it's not honest money, but it's money. So in the early years, the Woods' home life was, it's dysfunctional. It's very sad.
Oh, no.
They had a disruptive and a pretty dysfunctional life because in addition to Oscar's involvement in illegal activities, he was also a heavy drinker. Oh. And he also carried on multiple extramarital affairs with other women.
Saw that coming.
Like multiple women.
Yeah.
According to author Jim Schutz, I believe, during the day while he made his rounds, Oscar drank. He drank with his women. He drank at the illegal establishments he helped protect. He drank in the police car. By the time he came home at the end of the day, his condition was somewhere between fairly drunk and stinking.
Ew.
Yeah. So he was just shit-faced at all times.
Oh.
With 4 young children.
Yeah. Like, come on.
So while that obviously made for quite a challenging home life, Betty recalled, Mother made up so completely for Daddy's absences and drunks that we never felt any lack of love or attention.
Oh, man.
So
that's
Nell,
Nell, right? Yeah.
Nell was just out here making sure that...
Just being both parents.
Literally being both parents and making sure that these girls didn't fear, or any of these kids, like, felt any kind of...
Wow, Nell.
Like, abandonment from their dad.
Nell's an MVP.
Truly.
That's a parent right there.
That's a parent and a half.
Yeah.
So while her husband was off drinking, cheating, gambling, any of that kind of thing, Nell devoted all of her time and attention to her children. And by the time Betty and her twin sister Peggy came along, the couple's other daughters, I think it's Jadelle is one of their names, and Martha, they were 8 and 10 years old. So they were kind of establishing their independence. Like they could like get their food together, get dressed on their own, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So Nell shifted more of her focus onto her twins, Peggy and Betty. She lavished them with all kinds of attention, praise. Any penny she earned, she spent on her youngest daughters.
Aww.
Nell Wood's life had not been easy, and it never would be, but by devoting all of her energy to shielding her children from their father's drunken, abusive wrath, she managed to actually show them a life of comfort and love was possible, even when the circumstances weren't ideal. So she really was like...
She went above and beyond.
And she was a pretty good role model to be like, this could be yours. And obviously it wasn't as easy to divorce back then. And
no,
she wouldn't have... Likely she wouldn't have been able to support 4 daughters on her own.
Yeah.
So she was like,
she made
I
the
have
best
to
of her
stay with your
situation.
dad, but he's a fucking asshole. So let me do my best that I absolutely can.
So that you can have a better life.
Exactly.
Going forward.
Exactly. So by the time she reached high school, Betty had developed a strong and somewhat theatrical personality. All her years performing in the school plays and speaking in church had actually made her really comfortable in front of an audience, but she actually preferred to spend most of her time by herself. She was a little bit of a wallflower in that regard.
A little bit of a loner.
Yeah, but Peggy, her sister, her twin sister, was a lot more gregarious, and Peggy would drag Betty into social situations.
Okay.
So Betty said, like, she probably, in high school at least, wouldn't have had as many friends or time spent going to social outings had it not been for Peggy.
Yeah.
But
so it's like they credit each other.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
But while Betty was shy and bookish in most public settings, she had considerably fewer reservations when it came to boys. She really liked boys.
Liked it to the boys.
Schutz wrote, there was a devilish streak in her that enabled her to do things Peggy would have never dreamed of doing. Skipping school, coming home late in cars with boys who had been drinking. So
she was going for it.
And it's funny because it's like, I think to Peggy, she's like, oh, wow, like my sister Betty was so shy and I had to bring her out to introduce her to these people. And Betty's like, yeah, I'm shy, but like if I'm hanging out with somebody I think is handsome, let's fucking go,
let's
baby.
Go.
Which like is cool for now.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
So,
because I don't know this story. I almost said this show.
I don't know
this show.
Well, you will. So when she graduated from high school, Betty married her high school boyfriend, and the couple had 3 boys in very quick succession. But it didn't take long before their marriage started to fall apart. Betty said, my husband was a good man, but we both knew we'd gotten married too young. The truth was a little bit more complicated than that.
Oh, okay.
That was part of it.
Yeah,
like
that
they
sounded
were very
like a nice.
Yeah, that was that was really chalking it all up to like one thing.
Yeah.
By all accounts, Betty's first husband was said to be a good man. That's the truth. But he also believed in very specific gender roles, and he wanted to be very much in charge of what his wife did, what she wore, and where she went.
Was his name, what's that guy's name? Harrison.
Oh, the
Butthead?
kicker?
What's his last name?
I don't even know.
Kicker. The kicker. Was he the kicker?
Yeah, his last name isn't even worth
He's
knowing.
that guy reincarnated.
Honestly, it kind of sounds like that. And the thing was, for somebody as spirited as Betty, like we know she likes to go out and have a good time.
Yeah.
The idea of having somebody control every aspect of her life was just not something she was going to jive with. It was unacceptable.
I mean, nobody should control any aspect of your life.
No.
You control your life.
And it was also the dawn of the 1970s, so it went hand in hand with the women's liberation movement, and things were changing, and women were realizing, like, fuck this, I don't have to listen to this guy.
Times they were a-changing.
And Betty wanted to change with him. So recognizing that things weren't working out, they did end up getting divorced, and Betty's husband agreed to keep custody of the children until she got settled because she was moving to Huntsville, Alabama.
Okay.
So he was like, I'll keep the boys, you get settled in Huntsville, and then,
we can
we'll
work out
something
custody.
out. Okay. Exactly. But now freed from the responsibilities of children and a husband, Betty wasted no time establishing her new life in Huntsville. Initially, her plan was to get settled, find work, and then send for her children. Got it. Makes sense. Totally.
In some capacity.
Yeah. But instead, she worked 2 or 3 low-wage jobs and spent all of her money on clothes, drugs, and partying, and essentially completely abandoned those children for quite some time.
Wow, what an asshole move.
Yes. During the day, she worked at the local JCPenney department store, and at night, she worked the desk at a local health club, a job that not only helped her pay the bills, but also provided opportunities to meet other young, single people. She later said, "I've heard the stories and read the books about me that talked about the wild partying, the drugs, and the heavy drinking that went on there. Some of it was true, and I make no apologies for it."
I make no apologies for abandoning my children.
Yeah.
To party.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it.
Totally.
Got it, girl.
It's like, okay, I understand like women's liberation, 70s, like
Yeah.
you don't want to sit around having your husband tell you what to do.
Of course.
But you two collectively made the decision to bring 3 lives into the
you had
world.
children.
And you both owe those children equal love, attention, and care.
It's not about you anymore.
It's just not.
When you have kids, that's just accept it.
That's the way
It's
is.
not about you anymore.
Like you're not the primary.
Like you don't get to party anymore. Sorry.
Yeah,
You gave that up.
exactly.
Like you can be a full human being while being a parent.
Absolutely.
But you can't.
But
like,
you don't get to
just abandon your
prioritize
kids.
yourself anymore.
Exactly. You don't get to prioritize
All the
like
time.
frivolous shit.
Right.
Like partying
Exactly.
and not and especially just like straight up abandoning your kids. Like,
Yeah, and just like doing drugs and drinking. Like obviously go get your hair cut and have some you time. Like that's
Absolutely.
necessary for like a healthy, normal relationship with
But like
everyone in your
obviously,
life.
yeah.
But like don't just never see your fucking kids again and be like, I'm gonna go to the bar.
Yeah, like that's crazy.
Like, fuck
and I think
off.
we're obviously like over explaining because like
You know how it is.
You know how it is. But that's fucked.
Yeah,
It
this situation
It
is
just
so fucked.
I'm not going to over explain it. It's fucked in my opinion.
Well, and it continues to get more fucked.
yeah, so fuck that.
fuck.
So fuck.
And Betty never did send for her children. Instead,
Wow.
she spent the first few years of the 1970s working. She worked a few jobs at a time. She dated around, and she just enjoyed the freedom that she felt she never had.
Yeah, she's childless now. So
Yeah, exactly.
Look at that.
Now, a few years after arriving in Huntsville, a woman Betty met at the health club recommended that she apply for a job at the newly built, I think it's Humana Hospital. The woman told her, "You're too smart and pretty to spend your life doing this," like working at the health club. And she suggested Betty could use her as a reference since her husband was one of the investors who funded the development of the hospital. So the reference worked, and Betty did land a job at the hospital as a secretary, a unit secretary. She recalled, from the very first day, I loved it. I could hardly wait to get to work every morning. Which it's like,
Cool.
it's wild that you can like dedicate yourself to a job, but not 3 beings who lived inside of you.
That you created.
Like, whoa, that's cuckoo nuts.
That's interesting.
I think eventually, it's not like the main focus here. I think eventually she does end up reconnecting with her children, but
Okay.
she didn't raise them. It doesn't sound like.
That's their business. Exactly. It's none of my business.
But just to throw that out there, they did reconnect at some point.
And hey, I'm glad.
And I think
I hope it all worked out.
I think she was part of like her grandchildren's lives for a period of time.
Okay.
Which could be a good thing or a bad thing,
Which is
depending on how you look
again,
at it.
I do not know this story at all, so I'm speaking from total ignorance here of what happens next.
Well, you just wait. So the more Betty became involved with the patients, the more it occurred to her that working in healthcare, and specifically like one-on-one with patients, was exactly what she wanted to do with her life. So within the 3 years of starting as a secretary, she had completed the nursing program at the University of Alabama, and soon she was hired as a dialysis nurse.
Wow.
So, I mean, that's a big accomplishment. And it was through her work at the hospital that she came to meet Jack Wilson in 1976. He was a newly practicing and noticeably nervous ophthalmologist. Is it ophthalmologist or
I always say ophthalmologist.
Me too.
But then you think of like aesthetic.
Yes!
And it's like,
And you
it's
see it
not
spelled out.
aesthetic, it's aesthetic.
Aesthetic.
And it's
So
like, is it
ophthalmologist?
ophthalmologist? Actually, yeah, it might be that now that I'm
Let's
thinking.
Google it. So quack. So quack.
So quack. We'll Google it. So quack.
So quack.
Ophthalmologist. It feels like that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree.
But I've always said ophthalmologist. But what I've learned, especially through this podcast, is that I've been saying things wrong a lot for my life.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Ophthalmologist.
Ophthalmologist, see?
Oh my God, it's ophthalmologist.
No, it's not.
Ophthalmologist.
Ophthalmologist.
No, that I don't buy. I will not subscribe to that. I'll subscribe to ophthalmologist, but I will not subscribe to ophthalmologist. I won't do that.
That sounds like a rap song. Like,
Literally, I won't.
sounds like,
Ophthalmologist. Ophthalmologist.
I feel like my brain is breaking.
No, I'll accept ophthalmologist, but I'm not. I'll continue saying it wrong.
He was a doctor who specialized in eye care and health.
Boom. There you go. Got around it. Ophthalmologist.
There it is. Just stop saying it, please.
Ophthalmologist.
Never.
It's losing all meaning.
So she met Jack Wilson, a doctor specializing in eye care and health. And he was performing surgery. This is when they met. He was performing surgery on an elderly patient, and complications actually like arose in the middle of this surgery. It was like a medication allergy that the patient had. So the patient had to be rushed to the dialysis ward to be treated for renal failure.
Oh, wow.
Now, Betty became increasingly frustrated as Jack nervously paced around the room, worrying and repeatedly asking her if the elderly woman was going to be okay. Because this is his patient.
Yeah.
And he's a new doctor. He's
Yeah,
like,
of
I don't need a
course.
malpractice suit right off the bat.
Yeah.
But so Betty was like, Jesus Christ, like, can you just let me work on this? Like, you're pissing me off. But despite her annoyance, she also couldn't help but find what she described as the small, anxious man somewhat endearing. She later said, he reminded me of a little boy with an impish smile on his face all the time.
With an impish smile.
Yeah.
Adorable.
He just sounds very like,
He sounds very
sweet.
unassuming.
yeah, unassuming,
You know,
sweet.
non-threatening.
Very non-threatening.
Sweet.
Yeah.
A little nervous.
Yeah.
A little type A.
Very type A.
You know, we don't hate it.
Yeah, no, we don't hate it
We
at
don't
all.
hate that, you know?
Now let's talk about Jack.
Let's talk about him.
Okay. Well, like Betty, Jack had been raised under difficult circumstances. His circumstances are just as heartbreaking.
Oh, that's sad.
He was born in 1937 to a single mother who lacked the means to raise her children. So he ended up being raised by Werta and Bill Wilson. I don't know if it was like a traditional adoption story or if it was like we know, like his mom knew these people, but they ended up becoming his adoptive parents for all intents and purposes. So he was raised by Werta and Bill Wilson.
Okay.
Now, just as one of Betty's parents had been a pretty hard and cool person, Werta Wilson lacked the warmth and affection that, you know, is stereotypically characteristic of mothers. And she just constantly reminded Jack that his mother had abandoned him. His real mother. And this is awful, but she would tell him, she's a whore. She walks the streets of Los Angeles.
Wow.
Like a little boy.
Oh.
And then like all the way throughout his life, she would just tell him,
that's
like,
awful.
your mom's like a whore.
Oh my God.
Can you imagine just looking at
Poor
like
little boy.
a child that you took in?
Yeah, to like protect.
Yeah. However, if Jack's, I don't even want to call her a maternal figure because she's not, but
What was supposed
she
to
was
be a
his.
maternal figure?
If she was cold and mean, which she was, his father, Bill, was the complete opposite. Bill Wilson worked as a line cook in a restaurant and spent all day on his feet, often returning home completely exhausted, burned out from a long day. If you've worked in a kitchen as a line cook, you know. But no matter how tired he was, he always made time for Jack and was always over the moon excited to be with him.
Bill.
Bill's
a real one. Bill.
But just as Betty had longed to get out of her small town, Jack spent his days dreaming of a life somewhere other than where he lived, and he was raised in Chicago. Fortunately, he had always been very, very, like, incredibly intelligent, which, along with the determination and motivation instilled in him by his father, Bill, actually got him early admission to Occidental College. So during the day, he worked just like a regular old job to help support his family. And at night, he studied relentlessly for his classes. Now, after they ended up getting married, because they do get married, Jack told Betty he studied and worked hard, and worked so hard then because he, quote, wanted to be somebody, because he wanted to make money, because he wanted to be respected.
I mean, good for you, man.
He's just got drive.
Yeah, and he went through it. So
Yeah.
he's like, you know what? I wanted to become someone.
Exactly.
No matter where I came from.
Right. But he also studied because he was fascinated by the material and the subjects. He felt the idea that a person could suffer from a theoretically correctable vision problem, he felt like that was really frustrating. So he became completely determined to find cures for common vision impairments.
That's badass.
He's just like a good person who's
Yeah.
completely driven and just like wants to make a difference.
And he was in it for the right reasons. Like, obviously, everybody wants to, like, you know, be successful, be respected, like,
Yeah.
make money to support your family, all that stuff. And it's like, but he's also in it because he's like, I want to help people.
Yeah, he's like,
I want to help people's vision issues.
Yeah, like I'm frustrated that people have to deal with this. And if
Yeah.
there's something I can do to help, let me learn how to do it. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
I just really like him. He sounds like
Yeah.
a really nice guy. So that drive eventually took Jack to Memphis, where he studied for his doctorate at the University of Tennessee. And it was there that he met his first wife, Julia. Jack and Julia's marriage was pretty normal. They lived a quiet life. They had 2 sons together, and they actually eventually adopted a 3rd son. So he, as an adopted person, was like, I want to adopt a child.
Yeah, I want to, like, pay it forward.
Yeah. However, as like ordinary as their marriage was, it was marked by periods of upset. And Julia became more and more frustrated by Jack's almost pathological commitment to his work and the ways in which it kept him from his family. So by 1976, the strain on their relationship was just too much to bear, and Julia ended up leaving Jack with a plan to work things out through a trial separation. But she was like, something's got to change because we have this awesome family, and like, I do love you.
You're
I know
great
you love
when you're
me.
here,
You're a
but-
good dad, but you're great when you're here, but you're not here a lot.
Yeah.
So at first, Jack was actually shocked when Julia left. And I wonder if he was just, because like we know people like this, that you are so dedicated to your work that you don't even realize.
That things are falling apart around
Yes,
you. Yeah, because you're
exactly.
successful where you're focusing.
Right, exactly. So at first he was like, what? But the more he thought about it, the more it occurred to him that having never had a normal, stable life, he didn't really know how to build one with another
Yeah.
person. He didn't know that. Like, he didn't know what that looked like.
Yeah, of course. He wasn't taught that.
Yeah. But despite the challenges, Jack spent over a year trying to rebuild his relationship with Julia until he met Betty. From the moment they met, Jack was immediately drawn to Betty. Unlike the more traditional Southern women that he was pretty much accustomed to at that point, I mean, we know, but he was very strong, independent, and she did not seem interested in deferring to men.
Certainly not.
No. Their meeting also helped Jack understand that his marriage to Julia really was truly over.
Yeah.
Like, there wasn't a lot of hope there.
Yeah, there was nothing that they could salvage.
No, it didn't seem like it. So they divorced soon after, but they actually were lucky enough to remain friends with each other.
Oh, and that's good.
Yeah, and I feel like that so much speaks to who they both were.
Yeah, that they clearly loved each other. It just didn't work.
Exactly. But to Betty and Jack, Betty recalled, looking back, Jack and I never really dated. So it was more like they kind of just like met each other and then just like it just
happened.
It just kind of happened on its own. Yeah. They became friendly enough through their work at the hospital, and on their second date, Jack said, if we're going to spend the rest of our lives together, he may as well move in with me. I was like, okay.
I'm like, all right then.
So about a year after Jack moved in, because I think they just kind of like moved in with each other very quickly.
Yeah.
Betty got offered a job with a company in Atlanta, which Jack encouraged her to take. He was like, go for it.
Yeah.
The distance was hard, but they were determined to make their relationship work. So they stayed in touch through long distance phone calls and visits whenever possible. But that all came to an end in 1978. Now, at this point, they've only been together like 2 years. Because in 1978, Jack, who had suffered from Crohn's disease his entire life, he needed to get surgery to actually remove part of his lower intestine.
That's tough.
Yeah. Betty said, there was never any doubt as to what I would do. I quit my job, gave up my apartment, and moved back to Huntsville to be with Jack.
And I'm just like, does he know that you have 3 kids that you just abandoned?
Yeah, I don't know if at this point she like became, I'm not entirely sure at which point she became reconnected because like I said, she does eventually.
Okay.
And like she talks about grandkids.
Yeah. So
I don't know.
who knows?
But I'm like, interesting that you would, like, there was never any question there as to what you would do.
But it's like, but you were so quick to just kind of.
And I wonder if, I feel like there is some kind of psychology to the relationship that she has with Jack, because she herself said, like, she sees him as like not like a little boy, but remember she said, like, she saw
Him very unassuming, very like
innocent,
almost like wounded bird kind of thing, you know? So maybe it is like,
and she said
she
like,
almost is mothering a little bit or nurturing with him, I should say.
You know, and I wonder if she said like to herself, you know, like, I didn't go back when I should have, and like, is this life
Maybe
saying
I can
like,
make up for it here?
like, is this my second chance to like be there for somebody? Maybe. I don't know.
Maybe.
But the surgery prompted Betty to take the relationship more serious. And a short time after Jack's recovery, the two were married. To the outside world, their marriage was the type that most couples aspire to. They were wealthy, successful. They actually really seemed to enjoy one another's company.
And that's nice.
It is. In a 1996 interview, Betty said, "We were happy and satisfied with each other. He met every need that I or my children or my grandchildren had."
So there you go.
So at some point, he became involved in their lives too. But despite what others saw in Betty and Jack's relationship, or how Betty described it after Jack's death, the truth was that there had been tension involved in the marriage too, for quite some time. Betty had been charmed by Jack from the moment they met, like I said, but while she found many things about him endearing, the fact was that they were very different people.
And that can either work like swimmingly,
Yes,
or it can become the biggest issue.
exactly.
Yeah.
Now, Jack was incredibly, and to be frank, almost obsessively dedicated to his work. He was
That's what it sounds like.
very like work first. And often that came at the expense of other parts of his life.
As we see from his previous marriage,
Exactly.
unfortunately.
And I think it's something he tried to work on. Like, I don't think it's something that he completely ignored or anything
yeah.
like that. But I think that might
it
have
was
just been
hard.
who he was. That was
Yeah.
part of his personality. But Betty, she was driven and she worked, but she also always made time for a social life.
Yeah, she sounds like she did.
Yes. And Jack also wasn't materialistic in his professional or personal life, and he really went out of his way to help others.
Oh, he sounds so nice.
He really does. He sounds like a good guy. But Betty was far more money and things oriented. Like
Yeah.
she was kind of materialistic.
Yeah.
Which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it does become a bad thing here.
And it can be a butting heads thing.
Yes. And so those were all the kind of like smaller things that they were butting heads about.
Yeah.
But the greatest point of contention in their relationship was their intimate life. And I'm going to try to talk about it as delicately as possible, but it is a huge part of this case.
Okay.
So since leaving her first husband and moving to Huntsville so many years earlier, Betty had fully embraced that sexual liberation that helped define the 70s and 80s. But Jack, on the other hand, he was very, very shy when it came to the subject. He didn't like to openly talk about intimacy.
Okay.
If they were going to have a conversation that was even like remotely sexual in nature, Betty would have been the one to initiate that conversation.
Okay.
So for Betty, she felt like this was almost an awkward adolescent attitude toward intimacy, and she found it very frustrating.
Okay.
And things got worse once Jack had that operation to treat his Crohn's, because it resulted in him requiring an ostomy bag. Now, for Jack, who was shy to begin with, the ostomy bag made everything a lot more complicated.
Oh, that breaks my heart.
Which you can understand.
That breaks my heart.
I
for
know.
him.
I agree. Now, the physical reality of the bag itself, quote, made him even more painfully self-conscious than before. Which,
Oh, that like really breaks my heart.
because he just
it's
seems
so-
like a good person.
and it's out of your control. Like
It's
you did.
completely
Yeah.
beyond your
Like
control.
that just sucks.
It does. And the subsequent surgeries and medications caused various problems when it came to sexual functioning.
Okay.
So it was also just it became a physical
Yeah, of course. Reality. for him.
reality. Exactly. Thank you. Now, Betty, too, struggled to adjust to the post-surgery lifestyle and confided to friends, and this is just a cunt thing to say. I'm just going to put that right out there.
Wow.
It's a cunt thing to say. She confided to friends that she found the ostomy bag to be repulsive.
That's fucked up.
I'm sorry,
That's
but if,
fucked up to talk to your friends like, and say that.
because if you love somebody, you get past it.
Yeah, you
figure out a way to move
That's
past it.
fucked up.
Because, sorry, but like, I could never find any one part of my husband to be repulsive.
No, I was just thinking that. I was like, no. And especially something that
Is
that
beyond
was
his
painful
control
for him.
Yeah.
And that like needed to happen to
Right.
make his life better.
Yeah.
You know?
Painful physically, but also painful emotionally.
like everything.
And
It's
he's
like,
having a hard time coming to grips with it. Your job as a wife and as a support, and I'm not saying like I as a wife, but
As a
I'm
wife.
saying like as his wife and like his
As his
loved
partner.
one is to support him.
yeah, you guys are a team.
Like you build each other up.
It's supposed to be teamwork, man. And
Exactly.
teamwork isn't saying that the other one is gross because of something
No.
completely out of their control.
I
That's
just
just not
don't
teamwork.
get this
I don't get it.
personally.
Yeah, and that's just really mean to say.
It is really mean to say, to like gossip with your friends about your husband's.
Saying like that bag that he has to have because he had part of his intestines removed.
Yeah.
Because he's been in severe pain for years.
Yup.
It's repulsive.
Also, as a nurse to say
That's
that,
the other thing. I'm like,
well, shit.
damn.
Like, cool, Betty.
Yeah.
We love a supportive partner.
a supportive queen.
But the thing was, Betty had relied on her desirability to prop up her self-esteem for most of her life. So being romantically intimate was something that she pretty much required in order to feel valuable, which sure, I understand that to a degree, like you want to be wanted, but rather than adapt to their new circumstances or come up with any alternative way of expressing desire for one another, the problem festered.
Yeah.
And each of them found unproductive and harmful ways of dealing with stress and the emotional pain of the situation.
And it's not like they were going to go to therapy together and figure out, you know, some like sex therapist and see if they can, you know, make this work some other way.
Still the 70s.
Yeah, exactly.
So Jack retreated into himself, often getting lost in work, which it seems like that's just his MO, you know?
That's all he knows.
That's what he knows. While Betty, all she knew was heavily drinking and spending most of her time away from her husband. Years later, when Betty was on trial, so it's fine that I called her a cunt. The prosecutor would make a big deal of this dysfunction, pointing to it as one of the driving forces for murder. But Betty always denied that she and Jack's intimate life was part of the problem. She said, like all marriages, ours had its problems, but strangely enough, none of them had to do with sex. Jack and I were both grown people who believed that what we did in our bedroom was our business, as long as both of us agreed. Yes, I had affairs, but I never cheated, and neither did Jack. And here's the thing. So Betty's like, I never cheated. I had affairs, but I didn't cheat. And it's like, that's an oxymoron.
Yeah.
It's like what?
Like, that doesn't make sense to most people.
No. I would assume that if you have an open relationship, you wouldn't consider your other relationships affairs.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
I don't know. It's like, I don't know how that works.
I don't either. And I don't think Jack knew how that worked either.
Yeah.
So
it doesn't sound that way.
Yeah. Because whether or not Jack was fully on board with their having an open relationship is very unclear. But at the very least, he did know that Betty was having relationships with other men and typically just looked the other way. And his acceptance of her extramarital affairs just wasn't sufficient for Betty. She still wanted him to want to be with her, even though he couldn't physically fulfill that desire.
Yeah.
It's not that he didn't want to be with her. He was like, I can't in the way that you want me to be.
This is different. Like,
right.
We have a different reality.
Exactly. So even after she joined AA and stopped drinking, even after she managed to find satisfaction with other relationships, Betty continued to resent Jack for what she felt like was a complete desertion of his responsibilities as her husband.
Wow.
At first, she kept those frustrations to herself, but in time, she couldn't contain it anymore, and she would complain about her marriage to literally any soul that was going to even remotely listen. Like, anybody. So naturally, those closest to her were like, hey, have you thought about a divorce? Because it doesn't really sound like either of you are in this anymore.
Yeah.
But Betty would always flatly reject the idea, saying she wasn't willing to give up her lifestyle.
I knew that was coming.
Or her role as the wife of a successful doctor. Everything was just smoke and mirrors at that point.
Of course.
So at the end of the night, as the end of the 1990s dawned, not only had Betty's relationship all but fallen apart, other aspects of her life were crumbling as well. After years of regular participation in AA, a place where she actually had found solace and community, several of the other members of the group had become concerned about Betty's presence at the meetings. Among other things, in the meetings, she had been particularly vocal about her marital problems and kind of like flashed the fact that she was having affairs with other men. And a lot of other people in the group found that triggering or kind of viewed it as an indication of her relapse in sobriety. So whatever the reasons, there was enough of a concern over Betty's behavior that the majority felt it best that she find another AA group.
Whoa.
They were like, you can't sit
Like,
with
how
us.
often does that happen, I wonder?
I don't know, to be honest with you.
That's wild.
But I guess you can kind of understand why they would find that behavior triggering.
Absolutely.
You know, like
because it seems a little reckless.
It does. I mean,
Which
it is reckless.
Would feel very like, this is what I'm trying to get away from. Like, yeah, this kind of reckless attitude and laissez-faire attitude to reckless behavior.
Yes, exactly. And like, that's something that people who are in recovery can't really be around and don't need. Exactly. So she got kicked out of her AA group. And around the same time, several of her own friends were experiencing similar frustrations.
Because it would be strange.
Yeah, to have your friend
somebody be like flaunting that. Like, I feel like it would make me a little uncomfortable because I'd be like, I can't relate to you. Like, I don't know.
Well, not only that, but it's just like, you just complain about your husband all the time and like everyone's giving you like you don't want to be with this man, so don't be with this man.
Yeah, you can't just cite I want to be rich still.
Because here's the thing, like obviously we cover cases where it's like I don't want to be with this man, but it's dangerous to get away from the man. This
But
is
that's
not
just
one
not
of those
part of it.
cases.
Yeah.
He would have been like, okay.
This is just you don't want to give up the lifestyle.
Exactly. For years she'd been relying on friends of hers and friends of like hers and Jack's to give cover stories to Jack on nights that she would be out with other men.
Wow.
And they were done with it. According to Jim Schutz, they felt the behavior had become increasingly wrong, morally, and destructive.
Yeah, it kind of seems that way.
It does. So with her world just falling apart around her and her strongest support systems abandoning her, Betty decided that she needed to take drastic action quickly or she was just going to lose everything she had, all that wealth, all that privilege that she'd grown accustomed to. I just want to warn you, the murder part of this is very brutal. So a little before 5 p.m. on the evening of May 22nd, 1992, Jack arrived home from the office and pulled his car into the driveway, just as he did every other afternoon. A few minutes later, neighbors saw him come outside onto the front lawn, where he used an aluminum baseball bat to drive a campaign sign for a local politician into the ground, and then he went inside.
Okay.
That was the last activity anybody noticed at the Wilson house until Betty arrived home from an AA meeting. I think she found another one, a little after 9 p.m. the same night. Betty couldn't have been in the house more than a minute when she came running out of the front door and started pounding on the door of a neighbor. As far as the neighbor could tell, something had happened to Jack and Betty needed to call 911. So on the phone with the dispatcher, Betty explained that she'd just gotten back home and she went upstairs to find her husband's badly beaten body lying on the floor in the hallway just outside their bedroom. So officers arrived at the house a few minutes later and secured the scene, finding Jack just as Betty had described him. He was on the floor in the hallway lying in a large pool of blood. Somebody had murdered him, that was very obvious. But more than that, they had brutalized this man. His skull had been crushed in several places, presumably with the aluminum bat that was laying beside him. There were also crushing wounds to his hands, his legs, his arms, and his collarbone. In addition to the crushing injuries, he had been stabbed twice in the stomach.
Holy shit.
And there was heavy bruising around his neck, making it appear that somebody, in addition to all of this, had also tried to choke him.
What the fuck?
Overkill to the highest degree.
Oh my God.
A few days later, when the autopsy was completed, the pathologist would identify the cause of death as any one of the 9 blunt force injuries to Jack's skull.
Wow.
But if that hadn't done it, he most likely would have bled to death from the stab wounds to his stomach, the second of which had been made with a sawing and twisting motion.
Holy shit.
This, like...
Oh my God, that's so brutal.
It's so brutal. Now, that was in and of itself just flabbergasting to investigators that this was a home invasion maybe, and this is what happened to this man.
What
like,
the fuck?
They're like, what? Something felt off about this scene altogether from the moment they arrived. It seemed like somebody had been poking around in the upstairs bedroom, but the house was far from ransacked, and there was actually no sign of a forced entry. And it didn't appear like anything had been stolen. All of the valuable items like jewelry, televisions, VCRs, everything was laid out in plain sight. And it would have been, some of that would have been easy to grab, like running out the door, you know? But what was curious was that the phone line had been cut. And there were also multiple cigarette butts at the scene when neither Jack nor Betty were smokers. Now, those 2 facts, along with the green ski mask found in the bedroom, suggested that the killer had been lying in wait and surprised Jack when he got home, meaning this wasn't a robbery gone wrong. This was an intentional murder.
Yeah.
So Detective Mickey Brantley found Betty next door at the home of her neighbor, whose phone she had used to call 911. And he was like, hey, I got to sit down and talk to you for like at least a couple minutes.
Yeah.
So she explained that she returned home a little after 9 and she found Jack at the top of the stairs, but she couldn't be sure. She said she actually thought it was possible that when she got home, he might have still been alive. Which I'm not positive. But she also added that the couple hardly ever locked the doors because both of them were constantly coming and going so often.
Okay.
So that's why there was no sign of forced entry.
Yeah.
And finally, she provided the names and contact information for all the other people, workers, friends, their children who had access to the house. But otherwise, she had no information, and she was deemed, quote unquote, too distraught at the time to be questioned. So they couldn't really go much further. Now, from the moment Detective Brantley arrived at the scene, he strongly suspected that Jack's murder was not robbery, as others had suggested, but instead a crime of passion.
It felt too much to be robbery.
Right?
I mean, there's personal shit behind that.
It seems like it.
It feels like, at least.
It feels like it. And speaking with friends and family, investigators quickly learned that Jack and Betty's marriage seemed to have been in trouble for quite some time. In an interview with their housekeeper, Shirley Green, they learned that the couple had been sleeping in separate bedrooms for a long time, and that Betty frequently made derogatory comments about Jack's ostomy bag, which she almost always referred to as his shit bag. To be that crass.
What an asshole.
Like, you're a
what an
dick.
asshole.
Shirley Green, the housekeeper, also told detectives that Betty often entertained, quote unquote, male visitors at the house when Jack wasn't home.
Damn.
So on Saturday, the day after the murder, Detective Brantley was running down some leads when he came across a note about a call that had come into the precinct the day before Jack's murder. The call was from the sheriff in Huntsville, who received a tip from one of their informants, who claimed that she overheard a conversation in a local bar about a quote-unquote rich person, possibly a doctor or a doctor's wife, was going to be killed.
My God.
Now, Brantley called the Shelby County Sheriff's Office, where the tip had originated, and traced it back to a woman named Janine Russell, who claimed she was a drinking buddy of the man who was making these threats.
Huh.
Now, unfortunately, Janine didn't know any of the specifics other than the fact that the victim's wife had a twin sister who was romantically involved with the supposed hitman. If you remember, Betty has a twin sister named Peggy.
Holy shit.
And now there's a hitman involved.
And the twin sister is dating the hitman?
Supposedly.
Possibly?
According
Allegedly?
to this. Possibly allegedly, according to this tip. So the hitman in question was 41-year-old James White. He was a handyman whose children went to the school where Betty's twin sister, Peggy, taught first grade
Oh, shut the fuck up.
in Vincent, Alabama. About
She's a first grade teacher
She's-
dating a hitman?
possibly,
Allegedly?
possibly,
Possibly?
yes. Yep.
Suggestively? That's
All of the
wild.
above. Yep. So she was teaching in Vincent, which was about 2 hours from Huntsville, where Betty lived.
Damn.
Now, among other things, James White had a considerable criminal record, a long history of substance abuse and mental health issues, and also a dishonorable discharge from the military. So this guy's got
Some stuff going on.
a lot on his record.
Yeah.
He also had a spotty employment history. He was fired from jobs frequently for failure to show up or just never showed up to these jobs at all. During a 10-hour interrogation, he confessed to the killing of Jack Wilson and claimed he had done so at the request of one Peggy Lowe and her twin sister, Betty Wilson.
What the fuck?
Yes. According to James White, he met Peggy when his daughter was enrolled in her first grade class.
I cannot. I can't.
Like, what?
I can't.
And eventually she hired him to do some work in her home. After the work was completed, the two continued talking on the phone regularly, and at least on one occasion, Peggy told White that she loved him, and this is according to him. The relationship, quote, started with a few kisses here and there, he said, and soon they were talking on the phone more and more regularly. No, it was in these conversations that Peggy first mentioned having a friend who was in a, quote, bad marriage and whose husband mistreated her.
Wrong.
Incorrect. Eventually, though, Peggy clarified that the friend she was referring to was actually her sister Betty. Between March and April of 1992, the conversation evolved into making a plan to help Betty get out of her marriage by having Jack murdered, and eventually James White agreed to commit the murder of Jack Wilson in exchange for $5,000.
$5,000?
Yeah. To murder a whole-ass human.
That, what?
$5,000.
What?
He was down on his luck, I suppose.
What the fuck kind of person do you have to be?
I mean, what the fuck kind of person do you have to be for any amount of money? But
Literally.
5,000?
And also, if you look up a picture of Jack Wilson, just adorable.
Adorable. Like, he
Just
just
adorable.
seemed like the most mild-mannered,
He does.
kind man.
Like that, like-
I would not cross the street if I was walking
No,
past him. I
I
would
really
say, hello,
wouldn't.
how's it going?
Hi there.
And he'd say, good, how are you?
Yeah, he just feels, it's
I know.
really heartbreaking.
It really is.
God,
and especially
this
for
is awful.
his children and his first wife, Julia.
Yes.
It's like Julia knows how it is to not feel loved in the marriage anymore.
Yeah, because he's
because he's
he
dedicated
was
to his
working a
work.
lot, but they stayed friends.
They still stayed friends, exactly.
like they were able to still like care about each
like,
other.
just get out of a marriage and you might be able to just be friends.
Yeah, that's
no.
the thing. You could still be friends. He seems like he's, a good
Amicable.
guy.
Yeah.
Oh,
But no,
damn.
gotta have status. So, although James White had a criminal record in Shelby County, none of his arrests were for anything violent. And there was certainly nothing to indicate that he would commit a capital murder.
Holy shit. And one as brutal as this.
Yeah. So when asked why he'd committed the murder, he rambled on about his expenses and the troubles he'd been having with his ex-wife over custody of their children. But when pressed, he admitted he had done it to prove his love for Peggy. He told investigators, I was trying to win Miss Lowe's love and affection, and she was putting me in a crack to prove myself to her.
What?
According to White, he said it started as a joke, but she kept calling and pushing me to get something done to help her sister. Now, at first, he said he was only going to take the money and find somebody else to commit the murder using the .38 caliber pistol that Betty had given him.
Betty? Jesus.
I know.
You're a first grade teacher.
No, Betty. Peggy's the first grade
Peggy,
teacher.
Sorry, I'm confusing them.
It's hard.
Jeez.
So Betty, eventually he meets Betty and she gives him a pistol.
Yeah.
And says, kill him. But because he was desperately in need of money, he said he decided to do it himself. In the days leading up to the murder, he said he went back and forth with himself over whether he should just call the whole thing off. He said,
should have.
Yeah, of course you should have. He said, I'd been drinking the last 3 or 4 days, popping pills, drinking, smoking dope, and all I knew was I wanted to get away. But ultimately, he decided to go through with it.
Oh, that is a horrible decision.
And just to know that he was I hate to say on the fence. It feels like such a casual thing to say.
Trying to come to a human decision.
Yeah. So on the night of the murder, Betty had met him at a park nearby, drove him back to the house, and told him where to hide in the upstairs bedroom. In the time that passed between being dropped off and Jack's arrival, James White just poked around the Wilsons' home, which is why it looked like it had been poked through, casually going through Betty and Jack's belongings, including Jack's adventure closet.
Adventure closet?
He had an adventure closet. It was filled with helmets and wigs and capes and swords.
Shut up.
Yeah, just
This is the most wholesome, just, wow.
I know. I know.
Oh, so he went through all this shit, humanized this man as much as he possibly could.
Yeah.
And then went through this.
Yep.
That's fucked up.
Oh, yeah.
That is
100%.
fucked up.
So he's just going through all their shit, like you said, humanizing this man before he brutally attacks him. But James White became startled when the phone rang, and he got frustrated when there was no answering machine to pick it up, so it just kept ringing and ringing, and he was I don't know if he was high when all of this happened, but it kind of sounds like it.
The way he says it.
And the way he's the way he's responding to certain things, he panicked and ended up cutting the phone cord to ensure that the phone wouldn't ring again because it was really stressing him out. He said later about Jack coming home, I didn't hear him come in, and we were face to face, and he grabbed me, and I freaked out. Of course he grabbed you.
You're in his home.
You're an intruder. What the fuck? He then claimed he started grabbing around him for something to defend himself with, and eventually grabbed the bat that Jack had just used to pound the lawn sign into the ground. He said, I kept reaching until I found something, and I hit him until he turned me loose, and then I ran.
What the fuck?
Also, not that simple. No, you didn't.
No.
You also strangled this man and stabbed him.
With twisting, sawing motions?
Yeah.
Come on.
That's the thing. To hear James White tell it, the assault sounded like he was just fending off Jack until he could get away.
Yeah, no one believes that shit.
No, the truth was far more brutal. He hit Jack in the head with the bat a total of 7 times, crushing his skull. And as sheets of blood poured out over Jack's face and head, White continued to hit him, landing heavy blows to his arms, hands, which were raised to protect his face.
Oh my God.
It's heartbreaking. Causing the bones to break and actually tear through the skin.
Holy shit.
Like compound fractures. After several more swings of the bat, Jack had fallen into a crumpled heap on the floor, at which point White began strangling him until he felt his hyoid bone snap.
What the fuck is wrong with this asshole?
I can't even begin to tell you. Then, to make sure that he completed his task, which it's like, I'm pretty sure you did,
Yeah.
White took out the folding knife that he carried with him and stabbed Jack, first in the chest just below his right nipple, and then in the upper abdomen, sawing through the stomach and pancreas and severing 2 major veins.
My God.
He then fled down the stairs and out through the garage, and his first story is that he headed for the woods behind the house and eventually to his truck, which he drove back to Vincent. At some point, he changes his getaway story.
Shocked.
I know. So when investigators searched White's home in Vincent, they discovered a shoe with what turned out to be Jack's blood on the sole of it, a copy of Sleeping Beauty and the Firebird, which was a book of poetry that had been checked out of the Huntsville Public Library by Betty Wilson.
What the fuck?
When they searched the abandoned house next door, they were also able to locate Betty's .38 caliber pistol. And the blood-soaked clothing that White was wearing that night and the knife used to kill Jack were later recovered when White directed police toward the location under a rock where he had hidden them. So they found his bloody clothes and the knife that was literally used to kill Jack, but because they were found so much later in the investigation and had been pretty much like degraded by the elements at that point, later on the prosecution couldn't use those two
That's
things.
fucked up.
I know. But it's like,
right
obviously
there.
this man is involved. He has Betty's shit in
Obviously.
his possession. The abandoned house next door to him has Betty's shit. Jack's blood is on his shoes.
Yeah, like, come on.
And he can bring you right to multiple locations where multiple things were used in the murder.
Let's be real.
Like, come on. Now, given what detectives had learned about Jack and Betty's crumbling marriage and what was discovered in the search of James White's home, the scenario he described seemed entirely plausible. Mm-hmm. But the part that they were having trouble believing was to the extent to which Peggy was involved in this conspiracy. Because it's like, what? And it gets crazier. By all accounts, she was a pillar of her community. She was known as a devoted wife, like I said, a fucking first grade teacher. She was a regular attendee of the First Baptist Church of Vincent, where her husband, Wayne, was the minister of music. Crazy.
Okay.
Based on what they learned about Betty, it was well within the realm of possibility that she would conspire to kill her husband. But to everybody else, Peggy seemed like the last person on earth who would get caught up in that kind of scheme.
They're twins, man.
Folie à deux.
Yeah.
Yet every other part of James White's confession appeared to check out. So investigators had no reason not to believe him when he implicated Peggy Lowe. And District Attorney Mo Brooks asked reporters, what other reason would you have for a stranger to come to Huntsville from Shelby County to murder Dr. Wilson, have complete access to his home, and steal nothing except for the explanation he's given?
Yeah.
Like,
It's true. Like, what? How can you explain that?
you can't. So on May 28th, 1992, Huntsville police arrested Betty White and Peggy Lowe, much to the shock of everybody in Huntsville and Vincent. Peggy actually managed to post the $300,000 property bond thanks to generous church members. Church bonds run deep.
Wow.
But Betty was denied bail. When
Damn.
asked for comment on the arrest, Peggy's husband, Wayne Lowe, told a reporter, "Those girls weren't raised that way. All I know is when Betty saw it, she could hardly talk. She was in shock and she was just in a daze all through the funeral."
Okay.
It's like, yeah, you can be through a daze in the
Yeah,
funeral.
I mean, no matter what, it's fucked up. Like, it's all fucked up whether you had a hand in it or not.
Yeah, exactly. But Betty's lawyer agreed, saying his client, quote, would have no motive for wishing her husband harm. The people who knew them said there was no strife, and I've seen no evidence that there was trouble between them.
Are the people who knew them in the room with us
Like,
right now?
all of their friends,
Literally everyone who
like,
knows them.
people at her AA meeting were like, we can't handle your hatred of him anymore. And like,
their friends were like, yeah, we can't hear you talk about how much you hate Jack anymore.
and we can't keep lying to him and keeping him out of the house while you're entertaining your other manses.
Exactly. Like, what are you talking about?
What do you, like,
That's not even real. Like, come on. Like, try better.
a little bit.
Try better there.
But of course, in their investigation, detectives had learned there was actually quite a bit of strife between Betty and Jack, going back several years at this point. And as for motive, the district attorney had a fairly compelling theory that Jack's murder was the result of greed and status. Can you imagine?
You don't say.
In interviews with Betty's friends and associates, they learned that she had made several statements about not wanting to get a divorce because she claimed, I would lose everything. I would lose my lifestyle. Oh, boo.
Yeah.
Instead, Betty wished to become a widow, which not only would win her the sympathy of her social circle and gain everybody back, But in addition, she would also retain full access to Jack's estate, which at that point in time was valued at nearly $3 million.
Damn.
Yeah. Now, in order to avoid the death penalty, James White agreed to a plea bargain. He would receive a sentence of life in prison with the possibility of parole in 7 years, which I feel like they were like, I feel like they were like, yeah, no parole board is ever going to grant you parole, so like we'll put it on the table.
But sure, damn.
But in exchange, he would have to testify against both Betty and Peggy. In early July, both women were indicted by a grand jury for first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder, with Betty's trial scheduled for February of 1993 and Peggy's trial to follow shortly after.
Okay.
Now, in the months following Betty and Peggy's appearance before a grand jury, the press ran absolutely wild with coverage of Jack's murder. Page after page of newspapers across Alabama, and especially in Huntsville, provided seemingly endless details about Betty's affairs with various men and the extent to which she'd publicly shown her animosity toward her husband.
Damn.
And while many of the salacious aspects of her and Jack's life were made public, the press actually focused more heavily on Betty's primary love interest around the time of the murder, a man named Errol Fitzpatrick. At the time of Betty's arrest, he was working as a risk management officer for the city of Huntsville, and with all the negative attention caused by all of this, he actually had to resign from his position.
Wow.
So, like, that's how bad and, like, how intense things were getting.
Damn.
Now, while the press picked Betty's life apart, Peggy's friends and family rallied around her to defend her character. Reverend H.L. Martin told reporters, "Those of us who knew her, or who know her, have never seen any evidence of any action that would indicate any bad intent. Peggy is probably one of the strongest ministering people I've seen. She's taken in people who have been thrown out of their homes. A little girl in the community got pregnant and her family threw her out, so Peggy took her in."
Okay.
It's like, yeah, it sounds like she's willing to do a lot for those she loves.
Yeah.
Peggy's friends took a similarly stunned and disbelieving position. Her family friend Louise McGraw said, "Even if she told me she was involved in this, I wouldn't believe her. In order to be involved with this, she would have to be a Jekyll Hyde personality."
Yeah, nobody's like that. So that's good.
It's like, yeah, she would have to be.
Yeah.
Imagine if she was.
Yeah, imagine if that existed in the world. Yeah, that'd be crazy.
Nuts.
So crazy that people don't automatically show you that they're a vicious murderer.
Most people don't.
Murder for hire person.
Yeah. Now, it's worth noting that while many people came to the defense of Peggy Lowe, very few people spoke out on Betty's behalf.
Shocking.
I wonder why. Jury deliberation in Betty's case began in early April, with the prosecution being led by Jimmy Fry from the county prosecutor's office, and Betty's defense being led by Bobby Lee Cook. He was an Alabama defense attorney known for his courtroom theatrics and flair for the dramatics.
The best kind.
Oh, yeah. Now, by that point, the extensive press coverage had obviously affected what was going to be the trial, so it had to be moved from Huntsville to Tuscaloosa, which is so fun to say. But the defense hoped that they would find a less biased or otherwise influenced jury pool out in Tuscaloosa.
Yeah.
The biggest problem Betty Wilson's defense faced was James White's confession implicating her and her sister, but also her lifestyle, you know, like the heavy drinking, the extramarital affairs, and so on. That too presented a considerable challenge in what was a relatively conservative region. These people are going to look at her and be like,
yeah,
"Oy."
That's not going to be good.
So after questioning 96 potential jurors on everything from their faith in the testimony of law enforcement officers to their feelings about drinking and drug use and opinions on Betty's guilt or innocence, the pool was finally narrowed down and the trial was set to begin February 23rd, 1993. In his opening statement, County District Attorney Jimmy Fry laid out the state's case that Betty Wilson had paid James White $5,000 to murder her husband in order to protect what Fry referred to as her world of privilege.
Wow.
Which, I mean, it's kind of black and white.
Yeah.
Like, if I was sitting there, I'd be like,
seems pretty straightforward.
makes sense to me. He described Betty as a vain and selfish woman consumed by material needs, explaining to the jury that she feared getting a divorce would mean that she'd be cut off from her lifestyle, and she'd grown accustomed to that and didn't want to lose it.
Yeah.
He continued telling the jury, though it appeared she had everything, she wanted more, and not just more, she wanted it all, and she wanted it now.
Wow.
By arranging for Jack's murder, Fry concluded Betty stood to gain millions of dollars in a life insurance payout, as well as Jack's already substantial estate. So his estate was valued at $3 million, but then there was also life insurance on top of that.
That's just so sad that, like, These kind of things, especially when it's like for money or to keep a lifestyle. I'm like, our species is a wild species. Like just that this happens like so often. And with people that are supposed to love each other,
That's the
not
thing.
even strangers.
Right, that it happens so often with people who literally took vows to commit to one another. Like, you didn't have to do that.
Like, that's just really wild.
Yeah.
It never gets anything less than wild.
I know. It's so true. So, obviously, that's a strong argument, and to us it seems pretty black and white.
Absolutely.
But the prosecution's biggest hurdle was that their case against Betty was largely circumstantial.
Yeah, I can see that.
They did have a large amount of physical evidence, including hairs found on the ski mask, cigarette butts with DNA, hairs found in Jack's hand. But all of that connected James White to the murder, not Betty. In fact, aside from James White's confession, there was actually almost nothing to directly connect Betty Wilson to the murder of her husband.
I can see that.
Instead, Fry relied on his state statute that allowed corroboration to be shown through, quote unquote, evidence of malice, ill will, or threats that the accused has made or demonstrated towards the victim.
Interesting.
So Fry called one witness after another who testified to the animosity and open hostility that Betty felt for her husband, the most damning of whom was the couple's housekeeper.
I knew Shirley was coming back.
Shirley came back,
Yeah,
baby.
I knew Shirley wasn't going to let this go.
She said,
No,
fuck this
not
woman, I don't
Shirley.
like her.
Nope.
And she had heard like a lot of
She'd
terrible
seen
shit.
stuff.
Yeah. Among other things, Shirley Green testified that when Betty refused to go to Jack's mother's funeral, I'll say that again for you. Betty refused to go to her mother-in-law's funeral.
What?
And Jack was like, you know what? I might as well be dead. Like, that's how defeated he was.
Oh.
And that prompted Betty to retrieve her handgun from the bedroom, then to hand it to Jack and say, why don't you do it for me? This man is on his way to his mother's funeral. And Betty is not going to go, and he's upset about it and is like, okay, like, why don't I just die then? And she's like, yeah, go ahead.
Wow.
Go ahead and do it for me.
That's fucked up.
Like, on another level.
Sorry, if you can do something like that, I don't know where your bounds are.
You're pure evil.
Yeah.
According to the testimony from Betty and Jack's former friend, Brenda Sierra, I believe, she said Wilson, meaning Betty, stated that she wanted to kill her husband, and she asked Sarah if she would help her or if she knew how to do it. Well, so she was also going around like looking for other people.
I was going to say, so we've got another person. You go around and ask my friends, you're not going to find one of them that says I asked them if they could help me kill my husband.
Absolutely
You're just not
not.
going to find one.
Nope.
You find one, it means I did. And it's like that, hello.
Exactly.
If it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's a duck.
It's a duck. Quack, quack.
Yeah.
2 days into the trial, the state called its most important witness, James White. Fry was upfront with the jury, saying that even the prosecution found White to be a, quote, wretch, a pitiful human being. He said, but we're not depending on his credibility alone.
I mean, he really nailed that description.
A wretch.
A pitiful human being. Yeah.
The prosecution had produced multiple witnesses and evidence that corroborated James White's claims of having received money from Betty Wilson. And in addition to that, phone records showed that James White and Betty Wilson had spoken many times in the weeks leading up to the murder. And if you remember, Betty's library book was found in his possession. That proved that James White had been in Betty Wilson's company on at least one occasion.
And again, it's like, if it smells like it, it's it, man. Like, and absolutely, I can agree that before that, it's pretty circumstantial.
Totally.
But when you add this stuff in, it's like, there's no coincidence
it's like
this.
Her book is found in his possession, and his hair, blood, fingerprints, DNA
and
is
he
found in
admits
her
that
home.
he did this to Jack Wilson. And it's like, he's admitting that.
Like,
and then there's phone records between them, like all that, like, and she's walking around asking people, do you know anyone who will kill my husband? I mean, hello.
That's going from A to B to C to D. Like, we're hitting all the here.
Yeah, I know my calculus, and you plus me equals us here. Okay.
Look at that. I loved that.
No, so don't deny it.
Don't deny it. Given the circumstantial, quote unquote, nature of the case, the defense's strategy was obviously to poke holes in the credibility of the witnesses and to offer alternative explanations for the claims that Betty had repeatedly made vague threats to Jack's life. The core of their argument was pretty simple. They said James White had implicated Betty and her sister in the murder because it was the only way he could get a plea deal to avoid the death penalty. Without his statements and confession, they argued, the state would actually have no case against Betty Wilson.
I always love when they're like Allow me to explain away why Betty made vague death threats against her husband.
I can do that.
I just want to see all the jury members just lean forward and just cradle their
tell.
chin and just say, please explain to me.
Go for it.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Give me that explanation
Yeah.
why she made death threats against her husband but didn't actually have a part in his brutal murder for hire.
Go for it.
Go right ahead.
Please. I'm so
I'm
intrigued.
dying to know.
Yeah. In his opening statement, Betty's defense attorney, Cook, told the jury that James White was a pathological liar with a significant criminal record that involved everything from drunk driving to kidnapping. Under cross-examination, Cook shouted angrily at White, saying, "You're a great big liar," before starting to pick apart his story.
I mean, no one's saying this guy is a good guy. I mean, look, he's a fucking brutal
obviously
murderer.
not. We're just
He's
saying,
a piece
like,
of shit.
We're actually here to prove, like, yeah, he is a piece of shit.
Yeah.
And he's wrapped up with this other piece of shit.
Exactly.
So Cook pointed to the number of times that White had changed key parts of his story. Remember, I told you that was coming. Including his original statement that he had been instructed to shoot Jack, when later he stated that he was supposed to use the bat, and then his original claim that he had run from the house to the truck, which he later changed to say that Betty had driven him back to his truck.
That's a big inconsistency. I'll give him that.
That absolutely
that's
is.
a damaging one.
It is.
To like involve her in that part and
then
also
take her out of it.
Like that's like, ooh.
But also, I think his memory may not have been the most consistent.
Oh
memory.
there's no, it's
You
not
know?
like this guy has credibility to spare here.
Exactly.
But I'm just saying that's in the defense.
I mean, obviously they went for it.
They gifted him that.
They sure did, or he sure did.
Yeah.
Now, a few days into the trial, the defense produced a surprise witness, David Williamson. He was a salesman who claimed he had gotten into an argument with James White at a Huntsville hotel. At the time, White claimed to be hiding in the upstairs bedroom at the Wilson house. According to Williamson, the men got into a confrontation when White confronted him, demanding to know what the hell he was doing there. When Williamson responded that he didn't know what White was talking about, James White supposedly said, "I'll make that bitch pay for what she's doing to me. I'll show her what lonely is all about."
What the fuck?
Random. According to Williamson, James White had mistaken him for someone else and then, quote, quickly calmed down, apparently realizing he had the wrong person.
What?
Now, when he was asked about the confrontation, James White said he had literally never seen that man before, and also that he had never been to the Ramada Inn in Huntsville where this confrontation was supposed to have taken place.
The fuck?
So we have this one guy being like, at the exact moment that he was supposed to be in this house where his DNA was found on cigarette butts, his fingerprints was found, his hair was found, he wasn't there.
Where he admits that he was.
No.
No.
He was at a
Okay.
hotel and we got in a weird argument.
Look at this weird surprise
makes no
witness
sense.
we got.
Also, like, how much money did you get out of
what
this
the fuck?
situation? Like,
That's so, what a move.
I don't know about that.
What a move.
So on the final day of testimony, Peggy Lowe was called to testify. Peggy stated that she never wanted to kill Jack, and as far as she knew, neither did her sister Betty.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's just wild that he
Yeah, I
ended
know.
up dead.
She says it all the time, but like, it's
Jokes. And
Funny
it's crazy
jokes.
that Betty's only connection to this man is me, his
Yeah.
daughter's first grade teacher.
So wild.
I don't know.
On the day of my daughter's wedding, you know?
Now, according to her, the only money that James White had ever received from either of the women was given in an act of charity intended to help him get through a hard financial time.
And there you go. She's
To
like, let
account
me
for
just cover
money.
this real quick.
Yeah.
Yep, I'm just so charitable. So I'm sure there's money that
That you
has
will
passed
find.
between all of us, but it's total charity.
It's charity
Just out
money.
of the goodness of my heart.
She told the jury we were trying to help him. He
Yeah, I
seemed
bet.
like a pitiful little man, and he was making an honest effort.
Seems like somebody who is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She also explained that the phone calls between the three accused were all related to their attempts to help James White find work and nothing more.
Oh my God, so selfless.
It's weird. How
Yeah.
did he end up at your sister's house then?
So weird.
On March 3rd, 1993, closing statements were made in the case, during which Fry highlighted the evidence and testimony that corroborated James White's claims. He told the jury, "It doesn't take Sherlock Holmes to solve this case.
Sure doesn't.
You can feel what this woman was about and what she was after."
Yeah.
The defense, on the other hand, reminded the jury of the mostly circumstantial nature of the case against Betty, and that they said the evidence of poor character was not the same as evidence of murder. They were
Which I agree. We're not saying that it's just poor character
No.
that we're saying here. Yeah, somebody can be a blazing cunt and not be a murderer. I've met many of those people.
Yeah.
But it's like, we're not, there's other stuff.
Exactly.
There's other stuff here. Like we're not, which I know it's the defense's It's their
They gotta
job.
do what they gotta
It's their
do.
job to be like, you're just picking on her for being a bitch, and that's not fair.
No, it's just the fact that her husband
Yeah.
died.
It's just like,
in this really mysterious,
Looking from an
strange way.
outside perspective, you're like, I don't care if it's your job. I'm mad.
Exactly. But he got real theatrical, of course. And he
course.
said, Cook told the jury, this is not a case of maids, Mercedes, clothes, and jewelry.
No.
She is not being tried for adultery. She is being tried for murder.
For murder.
It's like, we know.
It's like, no, we know. We're here.
Like,
We know there's a whole man that was killed.
And we
Like,
got
a
instructions.
whole human being that was killed here. And it's like, we know it's not about Mercedes clothes and jewelry. Like,
Thank
that's
you.
not what we're here for.
Yep,
We're
like
here
I-
because a guy got murdered.
Exactly.
For no fucking reason.
Exactly. The jury's like, I wouldn't be here if it was about clothes, Mercedes, and
Yeah,
all
that's
that.
not
Like,
how that works.
I'm actually here to do something legit.
yeah.
So that jury deliberated for less than a day before delivering a verdict of guilty
Yes.
on both charges against Betty Wilson.
Bye, Betty.
Per an agreement made between the family and the prosecutor's office, Betty was spared the death penalty and instead received a sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole.
Damn.
Jack's sister Jane said afterwards, I don't think I would want to be the person to send anybody to the electric chair. She was guilty, and I don't think 30 years in prison is a piece of cake either.
Honestly, Jane,
Perfectly said.
perfectly said.
She's like,
and
you know
I
what?
feel you.
I
You
don't want that
your
on my
shit.
hands.
Yeah, she's like, I'm not a murderer. I don't want that on my head.
She did what she did, and
Yeah.
she can pay for it in the
Wow.
way that they saw fit.
What a like that was a refreshing take on the whole thing.
I know.
Good for you, Jane.
Now, after the verdict was read, Bobby Lee Cook, Betty's defense attorney, expressed his outrage to the reporters who had gathered around him in the hall. He told them, anyone that would believe that Mrs. Lowe would be engaged in a sexual liaison with Mr. White would have to take leave of their senses. I think she would have chosen someone more appealing.
Considered my senses left.
Also,
Because-
that's not even the main point of
I
this
know
case.
no one cares what they were doing. I literally don't give a shit.
They might have
about
just
them.
known each other.
Maybe they didn't barely knew each other. Who knows?
Exactly.
I don't care.
They knew
That's
each
not
other
what's
enough that
happening.
money was exchanged, acquaintances were made, and a man ended up dead.
Exactly. That's what everybody cares about. I don't give a shit what she's doing.
Exactly. Years later, Charles Hooper, another member of Betty Wilson's defense team, speculated, I think Miss Wilson was convicted on her personal conduct. She couldn't have been convicted on the evidence. The physical evidence was not there to support it.
Sometimes
Yes, it
it's not
was.
physical evidence either, and there is physical
There
evidence
is physical.
here.
It's not all circumstantial. Like a large portion of it is, but
Absolutely. But
like-
sometimes cases are made on circumstantial evidence.
yeah, sometimes there's not even a body.
like often, you don't need just physical evidence. There is some in this case, but like the
Yeah.
circumstantial evidence doesn't lie.
No.
It's evidence. Like that's why it has the word evidence in it, and not circumstantial bullshit.
Right.
That's like that would change things.
Exactly. Now, the members of the jury never said why they did vote the way they did, but there may have been a little bit of truth to Hooper's belief that Betty's conviction was due to her moral character. Just a few months later, Peggy Lowe was tried for the same crimes, using the same evidence, and more or less the same testimony. But this time, the defense argued that, among other things, Jack wasn't killed in the house, and even that a bat wasn't the murder weapon. Now, recalling the trial, prosecutor Donald Valeska said, it didn't make a damned how Dr. Wilson got killed. What matters was who did it, and James White admitted to doing it. Whether he stomped him, beat him with a bat, beat him with a stick, but that's the type of bull that experts try and sell to juries.
Wow.
So he's kind of said the quiet part aloud.
Pretty much.
Now, how the evidence was framed in Peggy's case wasn't the only difference. The outcome was also different. After hearing the evidence and testimony, a jury found Peggy not guilty on all charges.
Wow.
And considering how the same evidence and essentially the same testimony could produce two very different outcomes, it's definitely worth considering the accused themselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
Betty just came across as pretty much a greedy social climber. She had a long history of, extramarital affairs, abandoning her children, prioritizing drugs and alcohol.
Well, and like Peggy, it's like Betty had the motive.
Yes, exactly.
Like the very clear, very direct motive.
Exactly. And, in general, one might say that she was of low moral character, which honestly probably made it easier for a jury to believe that not only did she want out of her marriage, but that she was willing to do anything she could have to hold on to the lifestyle that she
Yeah.
had grown accustomed to. On the other hand, though, Peggy Lowe, like we said, by all accounts, she was an upstanding member of her community. She had a long history of community involvement, charity. She was a fucking first grade teacher. And she also wasn't just a regular attendee at church. Like I said earlier, she was even married to the minister of music. So you put all those things together and it's like, I mean, it doesn't mean foo to me, but you can see why it would have influence on a jury.
Yeah. And I think, and again, I don't even think it was, I think they're looking at it too, kind of in a shallow way here, where they're like, oh, they just did it based on moral character. And look, like this is why. And it's like, no. Betty has the more direct motive for this.
Exactly.
Like, obviously, it seems like Peggy knows at the very least that something was going on. Who knows? You know, allegedly, I have no idea.
Yeah, me either.
But all I know is that Betty was married to this man and walked around saying how much she hated him, had a ton of affairs, and actually asked people if they knew people that could kill her husband.
Exactly.
So it's like, I think that was more the thing. Like the actual her walking around telling people she wanted to kill her husband.
Definitely.
And the fact that she was like clearly unhappy, but saying, I don't want to divorce him because I don't want to lose my money. I feel like that is probably more it. Unless
I think that's definitely
the like shallow moral character kind of thing.
Exactly. And I think the shallow moral character did play a role in both trials. And I think like it makes sense in a way that Peggy got away with it because they didn't really have anything bad to say about her.
Well, that's the thing.
There's nothing to rely on there. Which is obviously not to suggest that the jury's verdict was biased or like based entirely on morality of these two women. Yeah. But it's unreasonable to assume that it didn't play at least some part in the trials themselves.
Which I'm sure it plays a part in a lot of these trials.
Exactly. Now, following Peggy's acquittal, James White actually recanted his confession. In a sworn affidavit, he wrote, I was never propositioned by Mrs. Peggy Lowe to murder Dr. Jack Wilson. I made it all up. But then a short time after submitting his sworn affidavit, he claimed that he had been coerced into signing that statement and now maintained that his original statement was and is the true version of events.
So nothing makes sense and you can't trust what's going on.
Exactly. Despite his being eligible for parole after just 7 years, he remains in prison. And his latest bid for parole, which was made in March of 2021, was denied by the parole board.
Yes.
Following her trial, Betty Wilson began serving her sentence at the Julia Tutwiler prison in Wetumpka, Alabama. She has always maintained her innocence and has filed several appeals with the state courts, all of which have been denied. In May of 2006, she got remarried to Bill Campbell, an Army contractor who actually saw her when a story about her appeared on the CBS show 48 Hours in 2002.
Oh.
And after learning the details of her story and her sentence, he felt outraged about the injustice. And that's how they started corresponding. And I guess they fell in love.
Wow.
Yeah. In 2022, independent filmmaker Gene Adam Jr. announced his new project, Finding Betty, in which he takes a closer look at the case in order to prove that Betty was innocent and was wrongfully convicted. He told reporters, I've made this film my life's mission because it calls into question the integrity of the justice system itself. I won't give up until justice is done. As of today, though, Betty Wilson remains in prison.
Wow.
I think the biggest thing is that it's hard for people to understand how one was sentenced and the other was not based on all of the same evidence, essentially. So,
I mean, it's
interesting case.
Very interesting case. Very tragic case.
Yeah. And
poor Jack Wilson.
He didn't deserve to die. I mean, nobody deserves to die, but
caught in the middle of this crap. And
exactly.
It's like, what an awful, awful, awful thing.
Yeah. Wow. And with that being said, we hope you keep listening.
And we hope you
keep
it
weird. But not so weird as any of this, because
no.